My name is Courtney Enya, and today I'm going to be presenting my paper, which is on sarcopenia and aging, the effects of obesity and physical activity on muscle loss and functional ability in the elderly. An overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'll just start with a brief background of why I chose my topic and some general information about the topic. We'll then discuss sarcopenia, the definition of it, some possible causes, as well as its links with obesity and physical activity. We'll also discuss functional ability and its relationship with obesity and physical activity. We'll also look at training programs designed for the elderly, and then finally we'll make a conclusion about what we've heard. Some background about why I chose this paper. Thinking about the obesity problem today in the United States kind of was my first thought. So as you can see here, according to the CDC, 17% of children today are obese. 80% of obese children will become obese adults, according to statistics. So you can kind of see where the problem is there. If you start out as an obese child and then you grow into an obese adult, that can cause some problems. Currently, 68% of the US population is overweight. 34% of those overweight people are obese. So then I started kind of thinking about obesity through the lifespan and what happens if you spend from childhood to your senior years as an obese or overweight person. So I kind of looked into some healthcare costs and just some general information about this. And what I found was that healthcare costs are at an all-time high today. In fact, we spend $18.5 billion annually in health-related care costs from injuries and illness as a result of sarcopenia-induced functional disability. So these are things that could result from a fall, which then leads to a fracture, which leads to surgeries, infections, and possibly long-term care. And with the geriatric population scheduled to double in the year 2030, you can see why this is becoming a big concern. So my question became, does obesity and a sedentary lifestyle have an effect on the functional ability of seniors? So starting with sarcopenia, just a brief definition, is a loss of muscle mass and integrity. Integrity being both the ability to perform power, strength, and just the muscle structure in general. It is a natural process of aging, unfortunately, and for some reason men are more susceptible than women for sarcopenia. Some people have theorized that this might be because men have a higher lean muscle mass than women, but again, that's just a theory that needs some more research. But it should be noted women do report higher rates of functional disability than men. Again, one possible reason could be because men don't want to report functional disability, or perhaps there's something going on with women that we're not aware of yet. Some of the possible causes of sarcopenia include long-term chronic inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and hormonal changes such as estrogen and testosterone, which we know fluctuate a lot throughout the lifespan, especially in women. After menopause, estrogen drops off quite dramatically. And estrogen and testosterone have been linked to inhibit some of these immune markers we're going to talk about here. So the first one is long-term chronic inflammation. Two immune system markers in particular have been studied, one of them being C-reactive protein and the other interleukin-6. And these have been shown to act as a precursor for sarcopenia. A kind of an observational study done by Fisher et al. Showed that people who self-reported regular physical exercise had lower levels of these inflammatory markers. And they used regular exercises 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And like I said before, these two inflammatory markers tend to rise when there's a drop in estrogen. So there has been a link verified between those. The next one is mitochondrial dysfunction. So the mitochondria in the muscle cell, is really important for synthesizing protein, producing energy and power for the muscle. One study was looking at lipid levels in the cell, the mitochondria, and as lipid levels are associated with mitochondrial dysfunction. And they did an exercise program of strength training in the legs, and what they found was quadriceps strength training reduced these intercellular lipids and increased power in the legs, which is important because our legs help us maintain our independence and functional ability. Hormonal changes. I already mentioned estrogen and testosterone, but a 12-week stair-stepping program done by Kemmler et al. In 2010, so just recently, found that a moderate intensity cardio program of stair-stepping lowered body weight and helped to regulate these estrogen levels, which we said helps to inhibit the production of those inflammatory markers. Moving on to obesity and how it relates to sarcopenia, you can break obesity down to 3 categories: BMI, waist circumference, and body fat. BMI is basically just a comparison of height and weight. And a study done by Moore et al. In 2006, they found a positive correlation between BMI and these inflammatory markers that we just discussed. So a different study, same markers. And while they didn't look at exercise, they did look at BMI. And that showed that the higher the BMI, the higher those inflammatory markers. So not only does exercise play a role, but weight does as well. Waist circumference is kind of becoming the new standard slowly for determining one's risk for comorbidities. So things like dyslipidemia, hypertension, coronary heart disease, and sarcopenia. A review of the NHANES, which is the National Health and Nutritional Survey, revealed waist circumference is a stronger predictor than BMI for these comorbidities that I just mentioned. Jansen and his group determined that 35 inches around the waist for women and 40 inches for men is kind of the cutoff point between low risk and high risk. And finally, body fat. Just kind of thinking about it, body fat, the more fat you have, the harder it is to move. And someone who's obese will be less inclined to move and have more physical activity just due to their size and the effort it takes to move around. So with all of that information of sarcopenia in mind, we're going to kind of switch over to functional ability and how that relates to everything we've just mentioned again. So functional ability is the ability to perform activities of daily living. So things like getting in and out of your bed, getting up from a chair, showering, using the restroom, feeding yourself, things like that that are necessary to maintain your independence. It's made up of 4 separate components: strength, power, aerobic fitness, and coordination. And of course, maintenance of muscle integrity, balance, and flexibility is necessary for functional ability. How does obesity relate to functional ability? So again, we'll go into those 3 categories of obesity. BMI of 29.9 or higher is considered obese. So again, we have those risks, that increased risk of those comorbidities. So the more of these morbidities you have, like hypertension, heart disease, deep vein thrombosis, the more of those you have, the less exercise and physical activity you're probably going to get and the less functional you probably are. Higher BMI is associated with higher reports of functional disability. Zoiko and his group in 2004 just kind of did an observational study where they brought in a lot of elderly people, had them do some leg strength testing just to compare, did a DEXA scan to look at body mass, and asked them a lot of things about their functional abilities. So it is self-reported, but they're asking things, like how easy is it for you to get in and out of a chair? How easy is it for you to get in and out of your car? And what they found was people with a BMI indicating obesity had more of these disabilities. Waist circumference, again, the same thing. It's a very significant predictor of these comorbidities, so it's directly related to functional ability. The more comorbidities you have, the less you're able to move around and do it efficiently. Excess body fat played kind of a bigger part in functional ability than sarcopenia, it seemed like. Android fat, which is kind of storing fat around your stomach, as we know, increases risk for heart disease. So again, if you have heart disease or a higher risk of it, you're probably not doing as much in terms of physical activity. A study done by Wanamethi and his group in 2005, they looked at lung capacity in lung disease such as COPD, asthma, chronic bronchitis. And what they found was that people with excess body fat had higher rates of these lung incapacities, reduces lung capacity. So again, if you're having trouble breathing or you know that you can't breathe well in the cold, you're less inclined to move around, exercise, go out. And Zoiko and his group, again the same study up here, they also indicated that there were higher rates of functional ability with excess fat. In fact, people with higher body fat percentages based on their DEXA had higher rates of functional disability than just BMI alone. So when he controlled for BMI, he found that body fat percentage had a bigger role in functional disability than just BMI alone.